Welcome home, honey.
I thought everything was perfect. It seemed so simple. I had a stable job that I worked hard at, a fiancé who smiled at me like I was the only one in the room, and a life that was unfolding just the way it was supposed to. We had plans, shared dreams. I thought I had everything figured out, and for the first time in my life, I felt like I was doing it right. Dinner's almost ready. Jenna called from the kitchen as I walked in through the front door, my briefcase still in hand. I smiled, tossing the case onto the couch. Great, I'm starving. She laughed, her voice light. I know you are. I've been waiting to spoil you tonight. I leaned against the doorframe, watching her move around the kitchen, her long hair tied back in a messy bun. She was so beautiful. Everything about her radiated warmth. At that moment, I thought I was the luckiest man in the world. Smells amazing in here, I said, my voice thick with appreciation. You really didn't have to go through all this trouble, you know? She glanced over her shoulder, her lips curling into a smile. I don't mind. I love making you happy. My heart swelled. It was moments like this that made me believe we were invincible, like nothing could ever break us. I hadn't realized then that the cracks were already there, hiding beneath the surface. The evening went on as usual. We ate, we laughed, talked about our plans for the weekend. We even talked about getting married. We were so close, I couldn't see how anything could go wrong. But when I walked into the bedroom that night, something felt off. At first, I couldn't pinpoint what had changed, but then my eyes landed on the empty space on the dresser where Jenna's things usually were. Her perfume. Her jewelry. Gone. My heart skipped a beat. Jenna? I called, walking deeper into the room. What's going on? There was no answer. I looked around, panic starting to creep in. Her side of the bed was untouched, the pillow fluffed and neat. My throat tightened, and I hurried to the living room, my eyes scanning the room for any sign of her. Her purse was gone. Her shoes. And then, on the kitchen counter, a note. I picked it up with trembling hands. I'm sorry. I've gone with someone else. I couldn't keep pretending. Don't try to find me. The words seemed to blur together as my vision swam. I let out a shaky breath. I couldn't process it. It felt like the ground had been ripped out from under me. I stumbled back into the bedroom, my legs giving way beneath me. My mind was spinning. I couldn't wrap my head around it. She was gone. Without warning. She couldn't just leave. She couldn't betray me like this. I sat on the bed, staring at the empty space where she had once slept, and felt the weight of everything that had just happened settle on my shoulders. How had I missed it? How had I been so blind? I picked up my phone and tried calling her, but it went straight to voicemail. I left a message, my voice cracking. Jenna, please, what is this? Where are you? We need to talk. But there was no answer. Just silence. I sat there for what felt like hours, my phone pressed to my ear, hoping for something, anything, that would tell me this wasn't real. But when I finally hung up, the truth hit me harder than anything else. She was gone. And I was left behind. I couldn't make sense of it. I thought I had done everything right. I had worked so hard to make her happy. I had sacrificed parts of myself, given everything I had to this relationship, and for what? I ran a hand through my hair and stood up, pacing the room. How could she do this? How could she just leave? My mind was racing. Was there someone else? Had I missed the signs? Had she been unhappy for a while, and I just didn't see it? I thought we were building something real. How could I have been so wrong? The days that followed were a blur. I tried to reach her again and again, but it was no use. The silence from her end of things felt suffocating. I went to work, but it was hard to focus on anything other than the empty space beside me in our apartment. People kept asking if I was okay. Of course, I lied. I didn't even know how to start explaining it. How do you tell someone that the woman you loved, the one you trusted with everything, just walked away without a second thought? I felt hollow. Like the person I had been was suddenly erased. All I had left were questions and a broken heart. But somewhere, deep down, I knew this wasn't the end. I wasn't going to let this destroy me. I didn't know where to begin, but I promised myself I would rebuild. I would get back on my feet. I would prove to myself that I could survive this. I would show her, show everyone, that I was stronger than this. That I could find happiness without her. And so, I made a vow to myself, I would not remain the man who was left behind. I would be the man who rose again. The journey wasn't going to be easy, but it had to start somewhere. It had to start now. The betrayal stung in ways I didn't think were possible. I spent the days after she left in a foggy numb, trying to make sense of it all. But nothing made sense. Nothing could explain how someone I'd loved, trusted, and built a future with could just walk away like it was nothing. I woke up early one morning, my mind still reeling from the shock, when I saw the notification. I hadn't been checking social media much, but something about that morning made me look. Her name flashed on my screen. It was a photo. A picture of her, laughing, sitting on a beach, her arm draped around another man's shoulders. His face was hidden, but the connection between them was clear. The caption, "New adventures, new beginnings." My stomach churned. I stared at the screen, unable to process what I was seeing. She looked so happy, so free. I didn't know what hurt more, the fact that she had moved on so easily or that she was doing it with someone else. Someone who wasn't me. I closed my phone and dropped it onto the couch. My hands were shaking. I didn't want to believe it. I couldn't. But the reality hit me like a punch to the gut. She was with someone else. I ran my fingers through my hair, my mind racing. What did that even mean? Was this all a lie? Had she been planning this for months? The thought that she had been with me all along while secretly harboring feelings for someone else shattered what little I had left of our relationship. I spent the next few days trying to ignore the feelings bubbling up. Anger, confusion, heartbreak, all of it hit at once. I couldn't eat. I couldn't sleep. I couldn't do anything but sit in the silence of our apartment, replaying every moment I'd spent with her. I wondered when things had started to unravel. Was it when I wasn't paying enough attention? Was it when I got too comfortable? Was I not enough for her? The hardest part was seeing her flaunt her new life for the world to see. Every post, every picture, every smile, she was living the life we'd planned. The life I thought we would build together. I couldn't help but watch. I didn't want to. I hated myself for it, but I couldn't turn away. I had to know what was happening. I had to know who this guy was, why she was smiling so brightly with him. Why wasn't she smiling like that with me? I told myself it didn't matter. But it did. Her posts showed her in a new city, holding hands with him at a party, looking as if she'd never been happier. And all I could do was sit there, staring at my phone like a fool, feeling like the whole world had come crashing down. She had left me, and now she was happy without me. That was all I could see. That was all I could feel. I kept coming back to the same question: what had I done wrong? There were nights when I couldn't sleep, my mind replaying every moment, every conversation, every date. Had I missed the signs? Had I been so wrapped up in what I thought was perfect that I failed to see the cracks in our relationship? I could have asked her, but I knew she wouldn't give me an answer. Not now. I kept thinking, maybe if I just told her how much I loved her, how much I needed her, maybe, just maybe, she'd realize what she was giving up. Maybe she'd come back. But even as I thought that, a part of me knew it wasn't true. It wasn't the love that mattered to her anymore. She had moved on, and I was just a chapter in her life that she'd closed. The reality of it all started to settle in, heavy and suffocating. I wasn't going to get her back. She wasn't coming home. Not to me. I looked out the window, feeling the weight of everything pressing down on me. I thought back to all the plans we'd made, the house, the trips, the future. And now? It was all gone. She was gone. And I was left with nothing but the pieces of a life I couldn't rebuild. The worst part wasn't the hurt, though. It wasn't the anger, or the betrayal. It was the emptiness. I had built my life around her, around us. And now that it was gone, I didn't know who I was anymore. I didn't know what to do. I felt like I had no choice but to either beg her to come back or to let go and start over. The idea of moving on seemed impossible. The idea of letting her go felt like I was throwing away the last piece of my heart. The crossroads were clear. Beg for her to return, or begin healing on my own. I thought about it, the choice swirling in my mind, and realized the truth. I couldn't beg. I couldn't. I had given her everything I had, and she had taken it and left me empty. If I begged, it wouldn't be me fighting for us, it would be me fighting for something that wasn't there anymore. The thought made me sick. So I chose to heal. It wouldn't be easy. I knew that. I was going to feel lost for a while. But I couldn't keep holding on to something that wasn't mine to keep. I had to find myself again. I had to build something from the ground up. For me. And so, I made my decision. It was time to stop looking back. It was time to move on. I woke up to an empty apartment, the silence feeling both foreign and oddly comforting. The days had been a blur of restless nights and silent mornings, but today, something inside me was different. I wasn't angry anymore. At least, not the way I had been. The anger had been replaced by something else, determination. A fire that had slowly started to burn inside me, urging me to move, to do something. I dragged myself out of bed, my muscles aching, my mind heavy with the weight of the last few weeks. But today, I wasn't going to sit around feeling sorry for myself. I had spent so much time wrapped up in her, in what we had, or what I thought we had. It was time to focus on myself. I stood in front of the bathroom mirror, taking a long, hard look at myself. The person staring back at me was a stranger. Tired eyes, slumped shoulders. I didn't recognize him. But for the first time in what felt like forever, I didn't hate what I saw. The hurt was still there, lingering like a shadow, but it wasn't as overwhelming anymore. I was still me. I was still here. With that thought, I turned toward the door and left. The gym wasn't far, just a 15-minute walk from my place. I remembered the first time I ever went there with Jenna. We had talked about getting in shape together, making time for ourselves. I had always pushed it aside, convinced there would be time later. Now, there was no more later. There was only now. I walked in and signed up. My first workout was rough. My body wasn't used to the strain, and my mind kept drifting back to her. I tried to focus, pushing myself harder, lifting weights I didn't think I could handle. Sweat dripped down my face, and with every drop, it felt like I was shedding a part of the old me. The weak, dependent man who had let his life slip away for someone who didn't care. By the end of that first session, I was exhausted, but there was a sense of pride I hadn't felt in a long time. I wasn't doing this for her. I wasn't doing this to prove anything to anyone. I was doing it for me. For the first time in ages, I felt like I was doing something just for myself. The next few weeks were a blur of work, gym sessions, and quiet nights spent alone. I started reading books, picking up skills I had always wanted to learn but never had the time for. It felt good, filling my head with knowledge instead of dwelling on the past. But even with all this, there were moments of doubt. There were nights when the loneliness hit me like a wave, crashing against everything I'd worked for. I would sit in the silence of my apartment, thinking about the life I had lost. It wasn't easy. It wasn't easy at all. But I didn't let those moments define me anymore. I pushed through them every time. I focused on my career. I threw myself into my work, determined to climb higher than I had before. I got the promotion I'd been eyeing for months, and for the first time in a long time, it felt like I was earning something that truly mattered. It wasn't about showing her I was better. It wasn't about revenge. It was about me. Proving to myself that I could achieve what I set out to do, without relying on anyone else. I had spent too much of my life giving to someone else. Now it was time to focus on me. I needed to rediscover who I was, what I was capable of. And every day, I got a little closer to that person. One evening, after another long day of work and training, I stood in front of the mirror again. The same mirror I had looked into so many times before. The man I saw was different this time. Stronger, yes, physically, but also emotionally. My shoulders were no longer slumped. My face held a confidence I hadn't seen in months. I smiled. It wasn't a big smile, just a small curve of my lips, but it was enough. It was the first time I had looked at myself and felt proud in a long time. "I'm going to be okay," I whispered, the words feeling real for the first time in ages. For so long, I had believed that without her, I was nothing. But now, I realized I didn't need her to be something. I didn't need her approval to define my worth. I was enough. This was the first step. A small one, but a step in the right direction. It wasn't just about getting revenge or making her regret leaving me. It was about becoming the person I was meant to be, the person I had forgotten along the way. And with that, I walked away from the mirror, feeling a sense of peace that I hadn't known in a long time. The journey was far from over, but I knew one thing for certain now: I was no longer the man I used to be. I was someone stronger. Someone better. And that was just the beginning. It's strange how quickly things can change. At first, it's small, almost unnoticeable. You don't realize how much you've grown until one day you look back and see how far you've come. That's how it was for me. The first few weeks after I made the decision to move on were tough. There were nights when I couldn't sleep, my mind racing through the past, wondering where things went wrong. But eventually, it all started to fade. The pain, the confusion, it all started to feel like a distant memory. I didn't miss her anymore. Instead, I started missing the person I used to be, the one who was confident, who believed in himself, who didn't let anyone dictate his happiness. And I made a promise to myself that I would find him again. I started hitting the gym more seriously. At first, it was just to clear my mind. But as the days turned into weeks, I noticed my body changing. The weight I had carried for so long, both physically and emotionally, started to melt away. I could see muscles where there used to be none. I could feel strength where there used to be weakness. But it wasn't just my body that was changing. My mindset shifted too. I started to realize just how much of my life I had wasted trying to please her. I'd done everything for her, sacrificed so much of myself, and in return, I got nothing but emptiness. It wasn't just her fault. I had allowed it. I had let myself become someone I wasn't, all for the sake of a relationship that wasn't real. Now, I was different. Confident. Focused. And for the first time in years, I wasn't seeking approval from anyone. Not from her. Not from anyone. I was doing it for me. And as I started to transform, something unexpected happened. People started noticing. At work, I was getting more respect. I had a new energy that people could sense, and suddenly, I was getting the attention I hadn't gotten before. A new job offer landed in my lap, one that paid more, had more responsibility, and was everything I'd ever wanted, but I'd never had the confidence to reach for it before. But now, it was mine. And I wasn't afraid of it. I was ready. And the respect I'd been craving, the respect I'd been denied for so long, was finally starting to come. I was no longer that insecure guy who let people walk all over him. I had become someone new, someone worth respecting. The first time I saw her again, I almost didn't recognize her. It was at a party, one of those work functions I used to dread. The place was crowded, people laughing, music blasting, but I was standing by the bar, sipping my drink, just trying to enjoy the night. And then, out of the corner of my eye, I saw her. She was standing by the door, laughing with some guy I didn't recognize, her hair bouncing around her shoulders, that smile on her face, the one that used to be reserved just for me. At first, I thought it was just someone who looked like her. But when I saw her glance in my direction, I knew it was her. She saw me too, and for a moment our eyes locked. The shock was immediate, like she couldn't believe I was standing there. I saw her face freeze, and for a split second, I saw a flicker of regret. I saw her eyes soften, just for a moment, like she realized something. Maybe she realized what she'd lost. I didn't move. I didn't say anything. I wasn't going to. Her gaze lingered on me for a few seconds longer, and then she excused herself from the conversation, walking toward me with a hesitant smile. "Mark," she said, her voice cautious but trying to sound upbeat. "I didn't expect to see you here." I didn't respond right away. I just looked at her, taking in how different she looked. She wasn't the same woman I had once known. I had changed, and so had she. "Yeah, it's a small world," I said, my voice calm, cool even. The man I was now wasn't someone who needed to chase after her, or beg for closure. I had found my peace. Her smile faltered, just a little. I didn't expect you to look like this," she said, a little too quickly. "You've really changed, Mark." And it hit me. She was trying to regain some control, trying to reel me back in with words. But I wasn't buying it. Not anymore. Not after everything. I nodded, but there was no warmth in my gesture. "Yeah, I've changed. But you didn't want the person I used to be. So, don't try to act like you do now." Her face flushed, and I saw the frustration building up behind her eyes. I could almost hear the words she wanted to say, but she didn't. Instead, she just stood there, awkwardly shifting her weight from one foot to the other. "I'm sorry," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "I never meant to hurt you." The words didn't sting like they used to. They didn't carry the weight they once did. I had heard them before, too many times. But now, they meant nothing. "I don't need your apology," I said, finally looking her in the eyes. "You hurt me, but I'm done with it. I'm done with you." And with that, I turned and walked away, leaving her standing there. I could feel her eyes on my back, but I didn't look back. For the first time, I felt free. The message came out of nowhere. I had been sitting at my desk, typing up some notes for work when I saw the notification pop up on my phone. My heart skipped a beat when I saw her name. Jenna. I hadn't heard from her in weeks, not since that night at the party when I had walked away without a second glance. I had moved on, or so I thought. But now, there it was, her name flashing on the screen, and for a moment, I froze. I didn't know what to do. The message was simple. She was asking to talk. She said she had made a mistake. That things weren't as perfect as they seemed with her new guy. I stared at the screen, the words twisting in my stomach. My mind raced. Part of me, just a small part, wanted to reach out, to hear her voice, to see if she meant what she was saying. Maybe she really had changed. Maybe she regretted leaving me. After all, we had built something together. Could it be that I had just been a chapter she wanted to revisit? Could it be that she missed me? But then, I thought about everything that had happened, the sleepless nights, the uncertainty, the lies. The way she had used me. The way she had walked away with no explanation, leaving me to pick up the pieces of a broken heart. I remembered the feeling of being utterly alone, the hollow space where she used to be, and how that space had eaten me alive for months. I remembered all the ways I had bent myself to fit her needs, how I had let myself disappear into the background of her life. I wasn't that man anymore. I had worked too hard to get to where I was. I had rebuilt myself from the ground up. And no matter how tempting it was to hear her out, I knew I couldn't go back. The phone buzzed again. Another message from her. "I know I hurt you. And I'm sorry. Things aren't as perfect as I thought they would be. Please, can we just talk? I miss you." I bit my lip, my hand tightening around my phone. My mind screamed at me to delete the message, to block her and move on. But another part of me whispered, what if she really means it? But I knew better. She didn't miss me. She missed the version of me that had given her everything. She missed the man who had been afraid to stand up for himself, the one who had been desperate to make her happy, no matter the cost. That man was gone. I wasn't going to fall into that trap again. I wasn't going to allow myself to be manipulated. I couldn't be the man who begged for her attention anymore. I had learned that lesson the hard way. I tapped out a response, my fingers shaking slightly as I wrote. "I'm not the same person I was when we were together. You're not the person I thought you were either. I've moved on. It's time for you to do the same." I hit send before I could change my mind, then tossed my phone onto the couch as if the act itself would somehow make the message more final. It was over. There would be no going back. I let out a deep breath, staring at the empty space where I'd once waited for her to come home. For a brief moment, I thought I'd feel regret, or maybe even guilt for being so harsh. But I didn't. Instead, I felt something I hadn't felt in a long time, peace. It was over. The phone buzzed again. She had replied. I didn't even bother looking. I knew what it would say. More apologies. More excuses. More of the same. But I wasn't interested. I got up, walked over to the kitchen, and grabbed a glass of water. As I sipped it, I looked out the window, the sun dipping below the horizon, casting everything in shades of orange and gold. It was beautiful. And it was mine. I had chosen to move forward. I had chosen to be free. I had chosen me. I had never understood what it meant to truly love myself before, but now I did. I wasn't perfect. I wasn't invincible. But I was stronger than I had ever been, and I was learning every day that I was enough, just as I was. My phone buzzed again, but I ignored it. Instead, I walked over to the window, opened it, and let the cool air rush in, filling my lungs with a sense of calm. The world felt a little smaller now, but in a good way. The possibilities felt endless. And I wasn't going to waste any more of my time looking back. I turned my attention to the life I was building. A life that was no longer defined by her or by what I thought I'd lost. This was my life now, and I was going to make it mine. I walked away from the window and sat down at my desk, where I'd been working on a new project. I looked at my phone again, but this time, I didn't even feel the need to check her messages. The man I had become wasn't interested in living in the past anymore. I was going forward. And that was all that mattered. It was inevitable, I suppose. She had reached out again, this time in person. She'd shown up at my door one afternoon, standing there like nothing had changed, looking the same as the day she left, with that familiar mixture of regret and hope in her eyes. "Mark," she said, her voice soft, but her words were heavy. "Can we talk?" I didn't invite her in. I didn't need to. I knew exactly what this was. "Talk about what?" I replied, leaning against the doorframe, arms crossed. What could we possibly have left to say? She hesitated, her lips pressing together in a thin line before she stepped forward, forcing her way past me. "I know I hurt you," she said, her voice tinged with desperation. "I know I made a huge mistake. But I've been thinking about you, about everything, and I realize now that you were the best thing that ever happened to me." I couldn't help but scoff at the words. They tasted like empty promises, like she thought I hadn't heard them all before. She was good at saying the right things when it suited her. She always had been. "You've been thinking about me?" I asked, disbelief lacing my voice. "Really? That's funny, because when you were with him, I don't remember you thinking about me once." She flinched, but quickly recovered, her eyes welling up. "I made a mistake, Mark. I didn't know what I had until it was gone. Please, just give me a chance to make it right. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry for everything." I stepped back, my gaze steady on her. The woman standing before me wasn't the same one I had once adored. She wasn't the person I thought I knew, and as much as I could feel a flicker of empathy for her, I couldn't deny what I had learned through all the pain. "No," I said simply, my voice calm but unwavering. "You don't get to apologize and expect everything to be okay again. Not after what you did." Her face tightened. "I know I hurt you," she repeated, but there was an edge to her voice now, a frustration she hadn't allowed herself before. "But what we had was real, Mark. You know that." I shook my head. "No. What we had was real to me. But I don't need you to define my worth anymore. I've spent so much time letting you control how I felt about myself. I thought I needed you to be happy. But now, I see how wrong I was." Her face fell, her hands trembling slightly as she reached out to touch my arm. I pulled away before she could make contact. She took a step back, her chest rising and falling with shallow breaths, her eyes wide with panic. You're not the same person, she said quietly, almost as if she was trying to convince herself. You've changed, Mark. Of course, I've changed, I replied, my voice growing firmer. I'm not the same weak, insecure guy I was when you left. I'm not the guy who tolerated being treated like an afterthought. I don't need you. I don't need your approval. I've rebuilt myself from scratch, and I'm not going to throw that away just because you show up here, claiming you've had some kind of epiphany. Her eyes welled up with tears, but I didn't feel pity. I didn't feel anything for her anymore. I couldn't. She had already shown me who she really was: selfish, manipulative, and unable to truly see me for who I was. And now that I had found myself again, I knew better than to fall back into the same traps. I don't want your apology, I said, my voice steady and resolute. What I want is to keep moving forward, without you. I've learned that my happiness doesn't depend on you. It never did. And if I go back to you now, it's just going to undo all the work I've done to get here. I can't let you do that to me again. Her face contorted in pain, but there was nothing I could do. She had made her choice long ago when she walked out the door. I wasn't going to let her walk back in and take over my life again. I've outgrown you, I said, the words hitting harder than I expected. You were a chapter in my life that I'm finally ready to close. She stood there for a moment, her shoulders sagging in defeat. I could see the regret in her eyes, but it was too late for that. She had burned that bridge the moment she chose someone else over me. I'm sorry, she whispered, her voice cracking. I didn't mean to hurt you like this. I know you didn't, I said, finally feeling a sense of peace. But it doesn't matter anymore. I'm done with the past. I turned and walked toward the door. I didn't look back. Goodbye, Jenna, I said quietly, my hand resting on the doorknob. I wish you well, but I'm moving on. And you need to do the same. With that, I opened the door and stepped out into the cool evening air, the weight of everything I'd left behind slowly lifting from my shoulders. For the first time in months, I felt free. Truly free. I woke up to sunlight pouring through my bedroom window, warming my face, and for the first time in a long time, I didn't feel the weight of the past hanging over me. I felt lighter. Free. The man who had once woken up in that same bed, filled with regret, loneliness, and pain, was gone. I wasn't him anymore. I stretched, taking in a deep breath. The fresh air from outside was invigorating. The apartment, my apartment, was no longer a prison. It was my space. A place where I could finally breathe without suffocating under the pressure of someone else's expectations. I had spent months rebuilding, not just physically but emotionally. I had started over from scratch, forcing myself to learn new things, to enjoy my own company, and most importantly, to stop chasing after something that wasn't coming back. I grabbed my phone and checked the time. Another early morning, and for once, I didn't feel rushed or anxious. I didn't feel the need to jump through hoops to please someone else. My time was my own. I smiled to myself, already looking forward to the day ahead. I had reconnected with old friends, people I had lost touch with while I was in that toxic relationship. They were excited to see me again, and we'd spent hours talking and laughing like no time had passed. And as I reconnected with them, I also made new connections. Real connections. People who cared about who I was, not who I pretended to be. I had also focused on my career. At work, I'd received recognition for the effort I had put in. I was given new responsibilities, and it felt good. The man I was now didn't need anyone's approval to feel validated. I didn't need a pat on the back or constant reassurances that I was doing well. I had already proved to myself that I could handle anything. I realized something important. For the first time in my life, I was living for myself. Not for anyone else. Jenna used to tell me how I needed to be someone better, how I wasn't enough the way I was. I had spent so much time trying to live up to her standards, never feeling good enough. Now I understood what I had been missing all along. True power doesn't come from someone else's approval. It comes from within. And now, I had that power. I wasn't just rebuilding my life in a superficial way. I was rebuilding myself. I wasn't the same man I used to be. I was stronger. I was more confident. I was fully aware of my worth, and I no longer needed someone else to tell me I was worthy. I made a commitment to continue this journey. I started learning new skills, picking up hobbies I had pushed aside before. I bought a guitar, something I'd always wanted to learn but never had the time for. The first few lessons were clumsy, but I didn't care. It was for me. For my own growth. I found joy in the little things, the morning coffee I could now enjoy without thinking about the drama of my past, the feeling of accomplishment after completing a workout, the satisfaction of a job well done. As I sat down to eat breakfast that morning, my thoughts drifted to Jenna. It was strange how little she mattered to me now. Once, she had been my everything. Now, she was nothing. I had spent so much time holding on to the idea of her, to the idea of us. But that idea was just a shadow of reality. I had built her up to be something she wasn't. She had made me feel small, like I wasn't enough. And for too long, I let that dictate my worth. But not anymore. She may have thought she had upgraded, that she had found something better, but I knew the truth. She would never find what I had found. True power doesn't come from running away or from using someone else to fill a void. It comes from within. And I had finally found that power in myself. As I finished my breakfast, I looked out the window again, the city stretching out before me. It was a beautiful day. The world felt wide open, full of possibilities. I wasn't afraid of it anymore. For the first time in my life, I felt like I was in control. I wasn't defined by my past, by Jenna, or by anyone else. I was the man I had always wanted to be. And I was just getting started. The message came, as I knew it would. It had been weeks since I last heard from her, and yet, I knew there was unfinished business between us. Not for me, but for her. She was desperate for closure, but she was too late. I'm sorry, Mark. I've made a huge mistake. Can we talk? I stared at the screen, the words still fresh but no longer carrying the weight they once did. I had already gone through the motions of grief and healing. She had already tried to apologize and say all the right things, but now I saw it for what it was, another attempt to reel me back in. I thought about deleting the message and blocking her number, just like I had with everything else from my past. But I knew this last conversation was important. Not for her, but for me. It was time to say everything I'd been holding inside, the things I had buried deep, things that still stung when I thought about them. I picked up my phone and called her. The line rang for a moment before she picked up, her voice cracking before she even spoke. Mark, she whispered, and I could hear the strain in her voice. I didn't know who else to talk to. Can we just meet? I need to explain. My jaw clenched. It wasn't anger I felt this time. It wasn't even frustration. It was exhaustion. Exhaustion from hearing the same words over and over, knowing they meant nothing. No, I said, my voice firm, but not unkind. There's nothing to explain. There was a long pause on the other end of the line. I could hear her breathing, the silence stretching between us like a thick, suffocating fog. I closed my eyes, taking a deep breath before speaking again. I've already heard everything you've had to say. I've given you more chances than I should have. And every time, it's the same. You say you're sorry, but nothing changes. I'm not the man you used to know, Jenna. And I'm not interested in being part of your story anymore. Her voice broke then, soft and shaky. I made a mistake, Mark. Please, don't do this. You were everything to me. I bit back the words that wanted to pour out. I could feel the old wounds trying to open up again, but I refused to let them. I wasn't going to let her drag me back into the cycle of pain I had spent months trying to escape. Everything? Is that what you think? I asked, my voice cold. You took everything I gave, Jenna. You took my time, my trust, my love. And for what? To use me, to keep me on a string while you chased after something better. And now that I'm not the man you thought you could control, you come back asking for forgiveness? She was silent, and I could feel the weight of my words settling in. She had no defense this time. She couldn't lie to me anymore. You've already had your chance to make things right, I continued, my words sharper now. But the truth is, Jenna, I was never your second chance. You were never my first. You were just a distraction from the life I wasn't living. And now, I'm living it. I'm done. I let those words hang in the air for a moment, knowing there was nothing more to say. I don't want you in my life anymore, I said, my voice steady, but I could feel the finality of it. I've already moved on. And you need to, too. I've let go of the past, and it's time you do the same. She was silent again, but I could hear the soft sobs on the other end of the line. A part of me almost felt bad. But I didn't. Not anymore. She had made her choice. She had walked away from me once, and now she had to face the consequences of that choice. I'm sorry, she whispered, but there was no sincerity left in her voice. There was only the echo of regret. I didn't need her apology anymore. I know you are, I said, a small exhale escaping my lips. But it doesn't matter anymore. I hung up the phone, the silence in the room suddenly feeling too loud. I stood there, holding the phone in my hand, knowing that I had just closed the door on a chapter of my life I'd been carrying for far too long. For so long, I had wondered if I would ever be able to fully let go. Wondered if there would always be a part of me that would long for what we had. But now, standing in the middle of my apartment, I knew. I knew I was free. For the first time in a long time, I wasn't weighed down by the past. I wasn't chasing something that wasn't mine to have. I was standing in my own truth, in the life I had built for myself, and there was nothing she could do to take that away from me anymore. I walked away from the phone, setting it down on the counter, and moved toward the window. The city was alive outside, buzzing with the energy of people going about their lives, just as I was. I had so much left to do. So much more to experience. And for the first time, I wasn't afraid of what the future held. It was my future now. And I was ready for it. The final goodbye wasn't just to her. It was to everything I had once been, the man who thought he needed her, the man who had been lost in her shadow. I had found myself again. And I wasn't going back.